You're listening to the weekly Parsha Podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat Beit Shemesh, Israel, 5786, 2026. This week's Parsha is Parshas Bo, and in our Parsha we have the completion of the Makos, and finally Paro agrees to let the Jewish people out of Egypt. The ninth Makkah, the ninth of the plagues, is the plague of darkness, and I'd like to share with you a medrash. And actually, we're going to see something that connects into next week's Parsha and connects into the moment of Hashem redeeming the Jewish people at Kriyas Yamsuf, and a special moment that connects into our Parsha, the plague of darkness, as we'll see together. And I've shared with you in the past, there are 3 pesukim over there, and we'll get into that. There are 3 pesukim that each have 72 letters. 3 pesukim in a row. We'll talk about it soon, but that's in the center of the concept of the darkness of Mitzrayim. Let's see. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe, pasuk says in Perek Yud pasuk Chaf Aleph, Hashem says to Moshe, Netei yodcha al hashamayim, spread out your hand toward the heavens. Yehi choshech el eretz Mitzrayim v'yomish choshech. There'll be darkness in the land of Egypt, and it will be something tangible. Vayed Moshe es yodo al hashamayim. That's what he did. He stretched out his hands toward the heavens. So the pasuk says something which we could read it 2 ways, but the Medrash is going to take it in a certain direction. But sounds like the Pashup Pshat is there was 3 days of darkness, choshech hafela, an unusual darkness in Egypt, in all of the land of Egypt. For 3 days, nobody was able to stand. They were not able to see each other. And the people of Israel had light in their habitation. Okay, so those are the pesukim that have to do with the actual plague of darkness. And we're going to see in the Medrash some very interesting things about this. Okay, so it sounds like it's not clear if there's multiple 3-day periods. It sounds, on the Pashup Pshat, I think in the pasuk, it sounds like it's just describing again those 3 days, what the character of it was, that they couldn't see anybody and they couldn't move. Rabbi Seinu Amru, our sages say, Shiva Yomim Shel Choshech Hayu. There were 7 days of darkness. Okay? 7 days of darkness. Ketzad. How is that? And important to understand and take note of a concept, which is that generally speaking, when we speak about the concept of teva, the concept of nature, the number 7 comes into play. Like we have 7 days of the week, which are really 6 plus Shabbos, right? So besides for that, there's also a concept of not just 6 plus Shabbos, but really those 6 break down into 2 sets of 3. For example, the menorah. The menorah was the candelabra, which was in the Beis Hamikdash in the temple. So it had 7 branches. It had a central branch, and it had 3 on each side. Okay, so you have a set of 3. They faced inwards towards the central branch, which was the concept of Malchus. It's the concept of Shabbos. Shabbos we could think of as being the last day of the week, but it could also be the middle of the week. It could be, we find that Shabbos is like the central branch of the menorah, and there are 3 days before, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and there's 3 days after, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We could think about it in different ways. Just hold on to that thought. Concept, there's 3 and 3 and 7 and a 7th. The 7th. Ketzad. Shlosh Yomim HaRishonim. So there were 7 days of darkness. The 7 days of darkness were composed of 3 and 3 and 1, as we'll see. The first 3 days, the first 3 days, it was dark, but if you wanted to stand up, you could stand up, and you were able to. If a person was standing and they wanted to sit, they could. It was just very dark for the Egyptians. The first pasuk that we read, that's referring to those 3 days. It says, there was a very thick darkness over Egypt for 3 days. They weren't able to see each other. There was another 3 days. In the second group of 3 days, it was a thicker darkness. It was a tangible darkness that actually held a person in place. If an Egyptian was sitting, he couldn't stand up. If he was standing, he couldn't sit down. If a person was leaning over, he couldn't straighten himself up. And about those 3 days, the pasuk says that they couldn't move for 3 days. They didn't get up for 3 days. And the Medrash tells us something remarkable. As a result of something that happened during the 3 days of darkness, the Jewish people had chen. They were able to charm the people of Egypt. When the Jews were about to leave Egypt, which is a little bit later, it's in next week's Parsha, there was something that happened during the plague of darkness which allowed them to be able to ask for gold and silver. That's what they did. Right before they left, they said, we need to borrow gold and silver as we go out on our way. And the Egyptians were willing and ready to give them the gold and silver because of something that happened during the darkness. During these 3 days of darkness, so the Jewish people themselves, it was light for them, wherever they went, as we'll see. So they walked into the Egyptian houses, and they were able to find, using this powerful spiritual light, as is explained by the Marzu, they were able to find the gold and the silver of the Egyptians. They didn't take it. So now, at this point, because they had walked in there and they knew where the precious gems and the precious gold and silver was, because they had that information, so they were able to say, as they were about to leave Egypt, in next week's Parsha, they were able to say, hey, lend us your gold and silver. They said, oh, we don't have any gold and silver. Oh, well, I know where it is. It's in the back drawer behind your t-shirts. It's right there on the third drawer down. And the Egyptians would have no choice. Why? What happened? The Egyptians had a logic here. Right? The Egyptians sensed, hey, if the fact that they know means that they already were here during the days of darkness, maybe they heard people clattering around. They were already here during the days of darkness. They didn't take it then. So, the Egyptians felt safe to assume that since they didn't take it when they could have taken it, they're not just going to take it now. They're just going to borrow it. As they say, they're just borrowing it. And therefore, the Egyptians lent their gold and silver to the Jews. Pasuk says, afterwards, the Jewish people will leave with a tremendous amount of wealth. Now, let it not bother you, your conscience. The Jewish people were stealing. We borrowed it. We didn't give it back in the end, right? Let it not bother you because, as Chazal say, the Jewish people were not paid. We were not paid for our work as slaves for 210 years or however long it was. And we're getting paid finally. You know, there's an open cheshbon. There's a reckoning that had to be done. The pasuk says all of the people of Israel had light where they were. Interestingly, it doesn't say in the land of Goshen, which is where the Jewish people lived. It says in their place of habitation. What is it referring to? Not the Jewish people's habitation, but to the places where the Egyptians lived. Wherever a Jew would go, the light would go with him, and it would enlighten him. What's inside of the barrels? Right? If they had hidden inside the barrel the gold and the silver, let's say on the bottom of the wine barrel. So it wasn't just, as the Marzu explains, it wasn't just a regular light. It was a powerful spiritual light. It was a light of Ruach HaKodesh, of divine inspiration, that enabled them to know what's inside of the drawers without even opening them, knowing what's inside at the bottom of the barrels, where the oitzer is, where their safe is. Valem nemar ner leragli dvarecha. Pasuk says in Tehillim that the Torah is a light. It's like a candle for my feet. It shows me. Your words show me. They're like a light that guides me. For Orlan Asivasai, it's a light for my paths. So the Torah and the spiritual revelation that the Jewish people experienced then, which is represented by the light, it's very beautiful. The light was able to inspire them. It wasn't just a physical light. The Egyptians had absolute utter darkness. The Jewish people had incredible light, a spiritual light that enabled them to see, really, if you think about it, what they really deserved. The money that was really theirs. The Egyptians had made them, as we said, work for so many years, and they never got paid. It's payment day. So what do we have here? We have 6 days, but there's a 7th day. There were 6 days of darkness in Egypt. Where's the 7th day? Now, usually, when we talk about the concept of 6 plus 1 equals 7, we have 6 days of the week, and then we have Shabbos. But here, the Shabbos aspect, we need to understand what is the Shabbos aspect. Hopefully, we'll get more into this. The Shabbos aspect, the deeper aspect, right? 6 days of the week, we work. Do all of your work. Right? We pause, we stop working, we receive all that we've been developing throughout the 6 days of creation, the 6 days of the week. We step back, we recognize that it's all from Hashem, we receive it, the food is all prepared from before Shabbos, everything is ready, there's nothing to talk about, there's nothing to deal with, no thoughts and no discussions of business, it's Shabbos, right? It's a day, Shabbos Hayom L'Hashem, it's a day for God. That's the 6 days of the week plus the 7th, which is Shabbos. But what about over here? There were 6 days of darkness and there was a 7th day of darkness. When is that? It says the Medrash an incredible thing. It was a little bit later. The 7th aspect of these 6 days of darkness, it added up and it compounded and it was, I would say, revealed in a different kind of way, but in a similar way, at the Yam Suf, at the sea, at the splitting of the sea, when the Jewish people were standing there, the Egyptians were behind them, the sea is in front of them, they don't know where to go. So there was a darkness there as well, and a light there as well. The Egyptians had darkness, the Jewish people had light. Shneimar, Pasuk says, Pasuk says, there was a cloud and there was darkness, and it lit up the night. So there's a contradiction here. And this is an amazing thing about spirituality, about the way that we experience Hashem. When Hashem reveals himself openly, so he's revealed in contradictions, right? Look at the plague, the Magefa of Barad, the Makkah of Barad. It was ice and it was fire. Contradictions, two elements, forces that can't coexist, but they coexist. And when Hashem reveals himself, there's a coexistence of opposite forces. Over here in the darkness, there was darkness for the Egyptians and there was light for the Jews. And that repeated itself later at Yam Suf. I'd like to read to you the pesukim there because they're incredible. These are the 3 pesukim. It's important to understand this. These 3 pesukim represent, just like we spoke about previously, how the name Ekyeh Asher Ekyeh, Hashem says, I will be what I will be. It represents the foundation of redemption. It represents Hashem's koach. Hashem is coming in and he is revealing himself completely, redeeming the Jewish people, right? That was the essence of the redemption at the onset. It was the concept of redemption. But these 3 pesukim that I'm going to read to you, which each have 72 letters, are the moment of redemption. And the moment of redemption consists of something very interesting. It consists of darkness for Egyptians and light for the Jews. Let's read these 3 pesukim. It's Vayisa, Vayova, Vayet. 3 pesukim in a row, 72 letters each. It's in Perek Yudalid, of Shemais, chapter 14, verse 19, 20, and 21. It says like this. Hashem is about to perform the amazing miracle. This is the prelude. This is the moment of redemption. After this, they will no longer be enslaved to Egypt. They will never return to Egypt again. They will be free to serve Hashem. The pasuk says, "Vayisa malach ha'elikim ha'hilech lefnei machane Yisrael." Hashem had an angel that was traveling in front of the Jewish people, leading them, and that was the Anan. That was the clouds of Hashem's glory. Vayelech me'achareim. The angel, as represented by the cloud, went behind them. Vayisa amud ha'onim mipneihem vayamon me'achareim. The cloud, which represented the angel, which of course is representative of Hashem's power in the world. The cloud of Hashem's glory went out from it, being in front of them and stationed itself behind them between the Jewish encampment and the Egyptian encampment. Pasuk Chav, Vayova bein machane Mitzrayim u'bein machane Yisrael. It came between the Egyptian camp and between the Jewish camp. Now listen to what happens, and this is our pasuk that we brought in our medrash. That anon, that cloud, served to cause deep darkness, just like the darkness here in Egypt that we're talking about in our Parsha. The same darkness returned for the Egyptians. And that same cloud created light for the people of Israel. It lit up the night. It was darkness for them, and it was light for them. Now, if you think about it, I think this might be the pshat, just like it was in Egypt. The darkness was like a barrier. They couldn't move. So this manifested in the same way. The Egyptians could not get through to the other side where the Jews were. The Jews were protected by a powerful darkness for Egypt and a light for the Jewish people. And then the pasuk says, the third pasuk of these three that have 72 letters, Vayet Moshe es yadai al hayam, vayolech Hashem es hayam, b'ruach kodim azah kol halayla, v'yasem es hayam l'chorava, v'yboku hamayim. This was the moment where Moshe stretches out his hand, interestingly similar to what happened by the Makkah of Choshech, by darkness. So over here, he stretches out his hand over the sea, and Hashem made the wind blow, splits the sea, and then the Jewish people go through, and I'm not sure about this. I'm saying this as a possibility that the Jewish people, when did they go through the Yam Suf? I think it was at night. For the Egyptians, it was dark. For the Jews, it was lit up by the clouds of Hashem's glory. And that movement of the Jews into the sea and the Egyptians following them, they were finally able to follow after the Jews because the Anan was moving. But they couldn't see anything. It was absolute darkness for them. They were encased in darkness, the Egyptians, and the Jews were encased in Hashem's light. This contradiction of darkness and light, and the separation, I would say, Hashem is mavdil. Hashem is mavdil. Interestingly, we say, mavdil ben kodesh l'chol, ben or l'choshech ben Yisrael la'amim. Hashem acts as a separator. He separates between holy and profane. He separates between the people of Israel and the nations of the world. And it means, as far as I understand, those who live in darkness. The Egyptians who lived in darkness. And Hashem, and I would say, maybe it's going to be true, and we're going to see this manifest with Iran. Those who live in darkness. So there's a separation that happens, and then, Ben Yom HaShvi l'Sheish Yimei HaMasa. There's a separation that Hashem makes between Shabbos and the 6 days of the week, the 6 days of work. There's a separation. Those first 6 days of Choshech were separated from the 7th day of Choshech. It's just interesting. I don't have a full understanding or a depth of it, but it's interesting to note. So Hashem, just as He did in Egypt, says the Medrash, just as in Egypt, there was darkness for the Egyptians, there was light for the Jews, so too it was in this moment, right before they were about to be redeemed, as they were about to walk through the sea. About this it says, Hashem oiri v'yishi. Hashem is my light and my salvation. Hashem is my light and salvation. I'd like to read to you shortly, for a little bit, another medrash which speaks about this. Hashem is my light and my salvation. But the concept of light, as this medrash seems to be saying, the concept of light comes together with salvation. Hashem is my light, David HaMelech says. Hashem separates between myself and my enemies, King David says. And Hashem separates between the Jewish people and their enemies. There's a darkness for the enemies. And Hashem is my light, only my light. Hashem is a light to the righteous. V'chein Lasid Levi says the Medrash, it's going to be the future time, in our times, the times of Moshiach. Yovi HaKadosh Baruch Hu Choshech. Hashem is also going to bring a great darkness. Shenemar Kinei HaChoshech Yichas Eretz, the pasuk says in Isaiah chapter 60 verse 2, there's going to be a darkness that covers the earth. And clearly the Medrash is saying we're going to have a repeat. We're going to have a repeat of the same concept, right? The pasuk tells us elsewhere in Tanakh, it says there's going to be a day which is not day and it's not night. You know, what's the day that's not day and not night? It's the same as the darkness. But for the Jewish people, there will be light. It's not going to be that the sun is what's providing our light anymore. It's going to be Hashem himself who provides our light. And when Hashem provides our light, he protects us. There's darkness for them and they're destroyed. And there's light for us and we are lifted up and raised and redeemed. This medrash is referenced elsewhere. The medrash is in Vayikra, in Parsha Sachremos, in Parsha Chaf Aleph, Siman Aleph. It says like this. Rabbi Lazar Pasar Kroya B'Yom, explaining the pasuk L'David Hashem Oyri V'Yishi, it's talking about the Jewish people at the sea. And remember, Hashem is our light. There's a contrast of darkness and light. Pasuk says about the Jewish people that the Anan, the clouds of Hashem's glory, they lit up the night for the Jewish people. V'Yishi, Hashem is my salvation. His Yatzivu Ru'uas Yeshuas Hashem. Stand up and see, and I'm saying this for us right now, the Jewish people right now. Stand up and see the salvation of Hashem. Right? Look at the amazing contrast between the enemies of the Jewish people here in 2025, 2026. Look at the contrast between the destruction that's been caused to those who hate us versus the great salvation that we have gone through. Stand up and see the Yeshuas Hashem. Hashem, is my light, He's my salvation. Mimi Ra, who do I need to be afraid of? Moshe says, don't be afraid. Hashem is the power, the strength of my life. As we saw last week. Ozi v'zimras kov. Mimi Evchad, who do I need to be afraid of? Tipol olem emasu afachad. I don't need to be afraid. The enemies need to be afraid. Look at this amazing contrast. The darkness for the Jewish people's enemies, the forces of evil, the darkness that envelops them and destroys them. And look at how we don't need to be afraid. I'm reminded of the Yalkut Shimoni, which I read to you in the Moshiach podcast a while ago, but always worth repeating. Talks about how Paras, the Persians, the Iranians, the king is going to destroy the whole world. That's what it says in Yeshaya, Perek Samach, which we quoted here in the other medrash. Yeshaya, Perek Samach, right at the beginning. Or is it Samach Aleph? I'm not sure. I think it's 60. Right, there's Kumi Oiri Kiva Oirech, the pasuk says, get up and shine, for the light, your light has come. The Jewish people have light. There's a darkness on the whole world, but there's a light for us. Right, Kumi means get up. It's 156, the Gematria. Just like Yosef. It's talking about Moshiach ben Yosef, the times that we're living in. And what happens? There's a contrast between light and dark. As they come and they want to cause us harm. Pasuk says about Paro Hikriv, he came close. Right? We have all these parallels between the Tehillah, the chapter of Tehillim of the David Hashem Oiri. They came to eat my flesh. That's what they're coming to do. They're going to destroy us and they're going to take over the land of Israel. All of the Arabs are going to live here. All the houses that they built for the Jews are going to be theirs. That's what they say. Shmuel Bar Nachman, Ein HaRasha Hazeh Yotzei Min HaOlam Asher Motzei Apafosim Shelo Mitoch Piv. Hashem forces the enemy. He forces Paro to say the very thing that indicates his own destruction. Omar oyev erdoi fasiga chalek shalol tarishem yodi enamar tarishem moi moirish ani oshroi uchvoidi lahem. The pasuk indicates, if you read it carefully, if you look at the language of the pasuk, they think that they're saying, I'm going to get all of their stuff. But what they're actually saying is, I'm going to give them my stuff. They're going to end up with all of my wealth, all of my money. Like we saw when they borrowed the silver and gold. Pasuk says in the David, Tzarai v'oivai. Right? Hema kashlu v'nofalo. They're going to fall. V'nir Paro v'chela. Pasuk says that Paro and all of his mighty horses and mighty men couldn't put Paro together again. They were shaken up in the waters. Yikan ve'elach Amar Yisrael. Imtachanel La'imachanel Yisrael says, Imtachanel La'imachanel, if there'll be an encampment that tries to come and destroy me. Shal Mitzrayim, says the Medrash. It's referring to the Egyptians, and I say it's referring to the Iranians. Lo yirali bi. My heart need not be afraid. Takum alay milchama. If there'll be those who wish to come against me in war, says the Medrash, Milchamtem Shal Mitzrayim, talking about the Egyptians who came out to fight against us, and I say talking about the Iranians. B'zois ani b'teach. I trust in Hashem. B'zois shevtachtani shenemar Hashem yilachim lachim. I trust in that which the pasuk says, Hashem will fight for you. Hashem will fight for you, and you'll be quiet. Atem tacharishu. That's what I trust in. And that Medrash in the Yalkut Shimoni in Perek Samach of Yeshaya says that as the Persians send out destruction in every direction, so the Jewish people are saying, where do we go? Where do we go? Where do we go? Do we come to Eretz Yisrael? Is it safe in Eretz Yisrael? Do we stay in America? Is it safe in America? And Hashem responds and says, Bonai, and I'm paraphrasing here, Bonai, don't worry. Everything that I've done, my dear children, is only for you. Everything that I've done here is for you to finally have your redemption. The Geula is here. The Geula is here. We're reading about a Geula in Mitzrayim, but we're looking at a Geula right now, right here in Tafshin Pei Vav. We're staring at the Geula. And we're saying, where do we go? Where do we go? What's going to be? Hashem says, everything that I've done is for you. And it's not like previous Galiyos. It's not like previous exiles where you went into exile, you came back, you were redeemed, but you went out again. This is the end. This is the last one. It's time to come home. This is it. This is the big one. And that's the depth of what's going on here. In Mitzrayim, we see the darkness and the light. We see the Egyptians are filled with darkness. Today, the Iranians have a blackout, right? An internet blackout. There's a darkness there, and there's a light for the Jewish people. Klal Yisrael has the Torah. We're being lit up. We're returning. So many people are returning back to Hashem. The whole result of all of these crazy things that have gone on for the last few years. Klal Yisrael is waking up. Klal Yisrael is coming back to the Bari Olam, to the Creator of the world. Our lights are turning back on as their lights are turning off. Hashem should bless us. I ask you to bless me. Hashem should bless you. That we should be able to see this amazing separation that takes place. We should be able to see how they are in darkness and we are in light. Hashem should help us to witness the moment of salvation when there's darkness for the world, for those who defy Hashem. And there is light for those who truly seek Hashem. Hashem should bless us in this way. We should have a beautiful Shabbos. Thank you so much for listening.
This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.